Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have another episode in our Spoiler Spotlight series in which I talk about, well, spoilers and tell you what my thoughts are on them. But before that, just a quick reminder to click subscribe if you enjoy my videos. We're well on our way to 1 million subscribers and your support means everything to me. And today we're going to be talking about the card Lost in the Maze. For X colorless and 2 blue, it's an enchantment that says Flash. When Lost in the Maze enters the battlefield, tap X target creatures, put a stun counter on each of those creatures you don't control. If a permanent with a stun counter would become untapped, remove 1 from it instead, and tapped creatures you control have hexproof. Now I really like this card. I think it's incredibly flexible and cool, and the reason that I think it's so good is because it's effectively a modal card that can come down for very cheap early and protect your board, or you can just sink some mana into it, cast it at instant speed late game, and close to win the game sometimes. This is just very, very powerful when you take all of that into consideration. So let's get started with the first of the 2 modes, which is tapping this early for 2 blue and giving hexproof to your tapped creatures. Often, when people are going to look to remove your creatures, they're going to wait till you've declared attacks, because that's when they know where your creatures are going. And that makes this card quite annoying just as a protection spell for 2 mana. If somebody's targeting an important card of yours, you just get to instantly give it hexproof. That feels pretty good, and you'd be happy to spend 2 mana to protect a very important creature, or maybe even your commander early game. Additionally, for just 1 mana more, you could also just tap the creature that's being targeted in the case that it's a creature that isn't tapped, and at that point this achieves the same effect. You suddenly have a protection spell for 3 mana. That's obviously a little bit worse, but most of the time you're going to be using this in decks that want to be tapping their creatures. However, I really like the late game mode for X colorless and blue. That seems a little bit expensive initially, but when you think about it, it's really not. If somebody has 5 creatures up late game that they're leaving back to defend against your attack, you get to main phase this for 7 mana, which is a lot of mana for sure, but tapping down your opponent's entire board, swinging, and then them having an entire other turn where their creatures don't untap in a race kind of situation, which battlecruiser metas often revert to, this is just incredibly powerful. It's kind of a win the game button out of nowhere, particularly if your opponent has problematic creatures that you can't really deal with otherwise. Tapping them down for effectively 2 turns is very strong. But because it has flash, it gets even better than that. You can wait till the attack step on your opponent's turn to tap all their stuff down, and then again you're going to have close to 2 turns to just swing at them with all your stuff, which is again very good in a race. If you're a little bit ahead and your opponent is trying to catch up on damage, then you can even bank on them attacking first, and whatever creatures they leave back to block with, you can tap at the end of their turn. This way you can also tap anything they play after combat. So this all offers a lot of flexibility, but what decks are interested in this kind of effect? That's where it becomes a little bit more complicated, because this not being an instant actually hurts a little bit in that sense. You'd usually want this in some kind of aggressive decks or spellslinger decks that are interested in attacking with tokens or things like that, but since it's not an instant or sorcery, you are kind of diluting your deck a little bit by running an enchantment like this, so I'm not sure it's going to fit perfectly well in those kind of decks. I see it more as a good finisher in multicolored decks that can make a lot of mana. So Simic decks could be very interested in this because they're often going to be making tons of mana. Monocolored decks actually seem like they would be very interested in this. If you have a monocolored deck that's interested in attacking, like my Min deck, suddenly this becomes a bit more valuable because for one, you're more of an aggressive monocolored deck, so this is going to be a good way for you to finish the game. But then also, those decks do have access to lots of ways to either double up mana or make a lot of mana with stuff like Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, or basic land type doubler effects such as Cage Sun, which are going to help pump this out for bigger mana. If you do manage to cast this for a lot of mana, say 15 or 20, then you can essentially tap down all of your opponent's creatures. Of course, you are sinking a ton of mana into it at that point, so it better win you the game, but even so, it is nice to have that kind of flexibility. There's a lot of different things that this can be used for, and it's good in lots of different situations, so I do see it as a good and flexible card that I'm going to try to put into decks, even though I'm not sure it's got the power level to breach the highest tiers of Commander. So there you have it. Those have been my thoughts on this new spoiler. What do you think about this card? Please let me know in the comment section below. I read all comments and respond to all of them too. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, take care.